Hello, everybody, and welcome to the 35th episode of Tides of Lore. My name is Robert Silva. I'm one half of your host team, joined as always by my good friend Tim. How are we doing this week, Tim?
I'm doing good, man. Teaching some new friends, well, not new friends, friends how to play WoW for the first time, retail WoW, and it's going as well as you might expect.
It's been quite interesting.
It's fun though. It is fun. But oh my lord, dying and time walking is not something I saw myself doing, but you know, here we are, wiping on, what is that one Legion dungeon
Crash
where you take the elevator down?
Oh no.
Well, that one, yeah. And the one where you take the elevator down, there's the spiders and you have to carry the light.
In the vault.
Oh, you remember that one? Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Fun times though. Memorable experiences.
I will say that the Legion dungeons are like up there as some of the most brutal in terms of mechanics. They're like, oh, you didn't break LOS. Everyone's just gonna die.
Yeah. And they had to have made it harder, right?
Yeah.
They must have done some tuning.
Well, because even like you and I were saying, like when we did this before, like I would never see half these mechanics, but
so
things
maybe
are
it's
dying.
not, we're playing with new people. Maybe they've done some tuning.
Yep. Who knows?
But it's been fun. Where a Moon Guard, a Stormwind Strokers come find us. We're exactly what you think, you know, here on Moon Guard.
We are not exactly what you think.
No, it's just a cool name. That's all.
It's lore accurate to the server, okay? We gotta fit in.
Exactly. What about you, Big Doug? How you been?
I've been doing pretty much the same shit that we've been doing for these last 2 weeks, 3 weeks. I've been running mounts. I've been running transmog. I've been editing the podcast. We're finally back on a normal working schedule, so that's enjoyable, at least on my end. Yeah, I mean, I'm tired of running Sanctum. I don't know how else to say it. I don't want to run Sanctum anymore.
Just get the mount, dude. Both of them.
I'm trying, man. I'm trying. I'm gonna get it this week. I'm gonna get my skip. I'm gonna run it on everybody. It's gonna be easy. I'm just tired of doing it.
People are saying the mounts like the Gmod and the horse mount from Sanctum and the worm from Tomb. People are saying they are bugged and they're not actually affected by the collector's bounty. So don't feel too bad. But to be fair, I did get.
I know you got the gloom charger.
I got them all.
Yeah, I mean, I have seen that info, and I did personally post on Reddit, like, comment that was like, I'm pretty sure that these, like, personal mounts are bugged. Like, they are not benefit. Like, I think that we saw one of our buddies post an article that was like, the other mounts are, like, still only around 2% or something like that. I don't buy that. Like, the actual raid mounts themselves, they feel pretty on point for being about 5 to 6%. But yeah, those other ones, dude, I posted that on Reddit saying like, here's the amount of runs that I did, and here's this. Like, statistically, it falls on like an average of being like a 1 in 100, much closer than being like a 1 in 5 or a 1 in 20 or something like that. And I got downvoted to shit for saying that. So
well, and here we are with the new post. Maybe it's just how you said it. I don't know.
I just threw up the stats. I'm like, I'm pretty sure that they're not working the way they're supposed to be. And then some guy was like, two of my buddies just got Gloom Charger in the same run. And I'm like, eat shit, to be honest. I don't know. And see, that's the frustrating thing kind of about this is that, like, it could just be literally confirmation bias that so much more people are running these things than they used to be, that people are getting the mounts, you know? You have more people running, you're going to see more people getting stuff. It's just, I don't know. I'm happy. I did get the Zareth Morden, or the Jailer mount. I got that in like 5 runs. I'm happy. I got the one mount, like, because the whole event I was just frustrated that I was like, why can't I get just one easy? Like, I can understand having to work hard for most of them, which I have. Just give me one easy. And it was that
and then they did.
Like, thank God.
We finally tossed you a bone.
Yep, I've earned it. But yeah, that's what we've been up to. More of that collector's bounty. I'm gonna do the Diablo event mostly this week, in between doing Tazavesh and Sanctum some more. But then the event will be over, and I'll feel like I'll have this vast emptiness inside me and be like, what now?
Well, now we have to get the like reputation mounts, the Shadowlands, like different faction mounts. Like we're not done. You just got the raid mounts and the dungeon mount.
That is true. Last week we did discuss the events that led to the end of the Shattering novel, the prelude to the Cataclysm. A lot of stuff dealing with Thrall and Garrosh and Bane, and a lot of really important events going on that led to the climax of that story. What do you remember about that, Tim?
I remember Garrosh killing. Was it Bane? I always forget. Bane or Cairn?
Cairn.
Which one's the dad? Cairn. So excuse me. I remember Garrosh killing Cairn because they were getting their weapons blessed, and Agatha Grim Totem poisoned that John instead of blessing it, and Garrosh didn't know at the time, right? So they fight. Garrosh is losing, but he cuts him up, gets him poisoned, and yeah, he dies. So the Grim Totem did this because they wanted to, kill the leader, seize the opportunity, and take Thunder Bluff, and they end up doing that for a little bit. And what else do I remember? Oh yeah, Moira over in Ironforge. She took over Ironforge because what's his face got crystallized? What's his name?
Magni.
What's his name? Who got crystallized?
Magni Bronzebeard.
Magni Bronzebeard. And then Varian went over and said, "Yo, we ain't doing this," and was about to beat Moira's ass, and came to the conclusion that not one dwarf should rule Ironforge, but it's all three different races of the dwarves should rule Ironforge. That was the biggest things I remember. I mean, I'm sure I'm missing some.
There was also Bane getting his own little rebellion against the Grim Totems after finding out about his father dying. Gets a bunch of airships and bombs from the goblins, from Gazlo over in Ratchet. Gets some money from Jaina Proudmoore. Gets the Hammer Faith Breaker or Fear Breaker from Anduin Wrynn. So kind of a crossing of two leaders to be, with Anduin and Bane meeting over in Theramore. And yeah, like you mentioned, Moira eventually being made one of the members of the Council of the Three Hammers after Anduin convinces Varian not to decapitate her in front of all of Ironforge.
That's crazy, because she's got dude, her son, Dagran, he's such a little... He's not nearly as cool as Moira, man. And if Moira died, would it be Dagran trying to get that,
I mean, that's kind of the plot of how the first War of the Three Hammers all kind of went down, where it was just like one person died, and before the son could take up the throne, everyone was like, I don't think so. Civil War time.
I can't imagine Dagran leading the dwarves.
I mean, I think he's still slated to be, so I guess we'll see.
Right.
Yep. But yeah, that is all that we discussed last week in both the comments and our episode. And this week we are going to move into the first actual events of the Cataclysm expansion. So let's just hop right into that. But yeah, that's what's been going on with us from this last week, and from you guys last week. We did have a few comments, starting with Piensa Marules, is what I'm going to assume this is, Piensa Marules, saying, thank you so much for doing this series. It's great to have more talk/casual discussion about the events in WoW and its lore. The Shattering book is never really focused on, so it's nice to hear these events talked in depth. I also love how Thrall goes through different people he would make war chief, but still decides to go with Garrosh, who he knows isn't a great fit. He wouldn't listen to anybody. He barely listens to Thrall, so, oh yes, now I'm going to give the stubborn, young, rash orc who hardly listens to even me, and say all that he needs are good advisors. Yeah, come on. Bad decisions, Thrall.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've said this in retrospect. He didn't make a good decision, but I think it was a decision for the story, right? Him doing this leads to a lot of things happening, and people really like Garrosh's character, like the villain he becomes, right? So they were probably, laying the groundwork for a good story. So
yeah, I don't know. I just feel like it could have been done better. Like, specifically, like, this comment even mentions it, like, he won't even listen to me. There are plenty of moments in, like, the comics and stuff like that where Garrosh gets mad at Thrall and is like, fight me. And Garrosh is lucky that Makara rules under Thrall don't mean you die, because Thrall has whooped his ass multiple times and been like, don't worry, young one, you'll get there, but you're not there yet. So, yeah, I don't know how he saw this figure and he was like, you're him. But yep, I mean, I think I will always live and die on this hill that it was the worst decision Thrall will ever make. But again, yeah, it's almost like the story was like, we need a reason for
Right.
the conflict between the Horde and the Alliance to be able to really take root. And if it's under Thrall, it probably just won't feel as authentic. So that's
right. They could have had a better reason. They probably could have had a better reason to shift it to be Garrosh. They probably could have came up with a better reason, but
just put Thrall in like a coma
arguably probably
or
why
shit.
they did it. Sure, yeah, yep. Exactly.
There you go. Then it makes sense. Then it makes sense that Cairn's like, yeah, I think it would have just made more sense. Like if he got closer to like the Vol'jin Sylvanas passing of the torch, I think it turning into that makes a lot more sense. But instead, he just makes bad plays. What can I say? We did also have the Time Lost Crow chiming in on this, saying, to me, I always saw it as Thrall, that passing the mantle to Garrosh would quell his rougher edges. As Thrall said, Garrosh wasn't his first choice. You're right, it's pretty insulting that Vol'jin or Lorthramar weren't even considered, probably because Lorthramar was always going on about how he isn't a good leader and wishes that the king was back. What should have been a few months turns into Thrall realizing that he's being pushed around by a tough orc lady. Thrall was thinking more with his dick, which is fair because he's probably still a virgin at that point.
Wow.
I mean, the first half, yeah, like you said, it is pretty just insane that Thrall jumps to the conclusion that he does with the... Because again, just the rationale of him choosing Garrosh is like, Garrosh is an orc who is strong, so he'll unite the Horde by serving as like a strong image for it. And he's like, I wouldn't want to give it to somebody who's like old or something like that, because then it could lead to rebellion within the Horde. And again, it's just like, oh no, how terrible would a rebellion within the Horde be? I'm sure that's not gonna happen. Oh wait, it literally does, like the first fucking day with the Grim Totem. I can't wait to keep talking about Garrosh. As you can tell, I'm a huge Garrosh fan.
Did nothing wrong, man.
That does also come to Crossed Quill Hearth saying, playing since vanilla, making Garrosh War Chief was way out of left field. The transition was weird too. I remember logging in to create a Horde in Cataclysm and being like, wait, what the hell happened to Thrall? Not much of an explanation was given. And I think this is again one of those times where you get the books being a good supplement to the story so you know what's going on, but once again they're like, oh, but if you haven't read the books, like, good luck figuring it out. Maybe it'll be in a quest text somewhere, maybe.
That's why for the longest time people don't care or didn't care about, WoW story like me. I loved it for the game, I love it for PvP, PvE, mounts, and the story was just kind of there, but you didn't get much back in the day, man. And I wasn't gonna read a book about it. I'm not a nerd.
But now I'm here to be the nerd, so it's all good. Before we dive into today's story, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe to Tides of Lore on YouTube, or if you're on Spotify, leave us a 5-star rating. It really helps the channel and ensures you won't miss a moment of this adventure. Now let's get started. Starting with Sylvanas Windrunner. It's time for her to come back in the story. It's been like 10 episodes since she's had a major storyline, and she is probably one of the most consistent characters throughout the entire story, so she got many more to come. But starting with, she is at the top of the Icecrown Citadel, where she finds herself reflecting over everything that's happened with Arthas, because everything that led up to Arthas was like her whole point in living, was to get revenge on Arthas and eventually kill him. And, well, he died already, and she wasn't there for it. And that's something that kind of eats at her. But as she walks around this shattered remains of the Icecrown Citadel, she sees portions of his broken armor on the floor. She gets all pissed off. She literally, I'm pretty sure the opening line for this story is, "You son of a bitch," as she kicks one of his pauldrons across the floor. So it's quite clear that Sylvanas is really furious with how everything went down with Arthas. At the very least, that she probably wasn't allowed to torture him to death in a similar way that she was also tortured. And she's, come up to Icecrown Citadel to ensure that everything, that she's been told and seen is true. But As she's having a bit of her fit, she explodes with fury. This closure that she's had is not enough, as this overwhelming emptiness begins to overcome her. And as she stares off the edge of the summit of this tower, she sees 9 spectral figures hovering in this loose ring around the frozen throne. The Val'kyr, those ancient warrior maidens who we mentioned were eventually transformed into, well, necromancers for the dead. They kind of go between the realm of the living and the Shadowlands, which is the realm beyond of death. And they capture souls, and with that, they are kind of, like I said, necromancers. And she doesn't really know why. She's just like, why are they watching? Are they waiting for something? Are they judging? But at this point, she's like, I literally actually don't even give a shit what they're doing, as long as they remain out of my way. But that is when Sylvanas herself actually turns to the throne of the frozen throne, and she sees, wait a second, did somebody prop up Arthas's corpse inside the frozen throne as some sort of mockery? She's like, no, it can't be. So she climbs up the steps, and as she sees a figure sitting in the frozen throne, completely encapsulated in ice, she runs her hands across it, and sure enough, there is somebody sitting there, except it's not Arthas. Still wearing his helmet, however, she does see Bolvar Fordragon as the new Lich King, with his skin basically boiling lava and the Helm of Domination glowing orange eyes as he sits behind this ice barrier. And as you might imagine, Sylvanas is not all too pleased with this either. She apparently slams her hand into this ice and it cracks a little bit as she lets out a fucking scream of anger, as she is just like, they just replaced the Lich King. Like, the figure that had once shattered my entire world has just been replaced by another. And she's like, how does anyone know that this person won't eventually turn into like just as bad as Arthas or even worse? So she's pissed. And with all that happening, with her already being in this like emotional state, she finds herself in this like illusion of victory. Like, because yes, Arthas is dead. They won against the Lich King, but it just feels like a failure, this illusion of success, like I said. So she's like, well, my whole purpose has basically been to kill Arthas, to remove the Lich King, to free the Forsaken up to this point. And that's been done for the most part, but it seems like this cycle will never end. And I don't even care to play this game. She's even shocked that she still exists at this point, because she's like, I was almost certain that when Arthas died, the Forsaken would just kind of cease existing as well. The necromantic magics that kept them together would fade as he left. Unfortunately, no, not quite that easy.
Well, there's still the Helm of Domination, right?
Yep. But that is part of the reason I think that she is kind of like all putting this all together of like their most. But even then, we know that once there's no helm, the Scourge don't just die; they just stop being controlled.
So they're running free once the helm is destroyed.
Supposedly,
like, not free will in a sense.
Yeah, I know. I do it. They're just without a direction.
But they're kind of
yeah.
Right. They're just attacking anything in sight.
We do get a lot of this in like the Exploring Northrend books that come way far down in the future, so we're not really talking about them now. But yeah, when that does happen, they do explore certain areas like Zuldrak and stuff like that that still very much have Scourge, and they're very much like feral. So, but yeah, this overwhelming sense of hopelessness washes over Sylvanas as she approaches the edge of Icecrown Citadel and stares 1,000 feet below her at the jagged spikes of serenite that pop out from the base of it. And she's just overwhelmed by this sense of hopelessness that she just begins taking her armor off and is like, I'm certain that even though my body, she describes herself as like her undead body is like nearly immortal. She's like, if I land on one of those spikes, it'll definitely do the work. Like, allegedly, this serenite destroys the undead soul. So, sounds like a good plan to me. And as she lets go of all these memories of all her arrows scattering in the wind beside her, she takes one step off and feels just the wind falling past her face. And the Val'kyr just kind of look at her for a moment. But again, she's like, I don't care about them. And she falls, and eventually she just cuts to black. And that is where you have her struck by these horrific visions falling through like this endless void where she has visions not of herself but the Forsaken's people without her, where she sees Garrosh Hellscream recklessly sacrificing Forsakens in disastrous assaults, specifically on the realm of Gilneas, treating them as expendable fodder, where in this chaos they just try and rally this desperate counterattack, but it's too late and the Forsaken are completely surrounded and outnumbered, and plenty of them choose to be set on fire, literally, over being subjugated, casting themselves into the flames that they're surrounded by, rather than fall to the Alliance. And this is the visions that begin to get seared into her mind as she fades into the afterlife. Are you ready to talk about my favorite character in all of World of Warcraft?
Garrosh?
No, there's a character I love even more than Garrosh.
Who's that?
Because as Sylvanas' soul descends all the way into the afterlife, she ends up going into this place of horrible, terrible things. In the area of the Shadowlands, the afterlife, there is this particularly shitty spot that you can end up going to called the Maw. And that's where she ends up going. She gets sent down into the Maw, where she is tormented by these Mawsworn, basically these servants to this super evil overlord guy, that just make their whole point to subjugate anyone that ends up going to this portion of the afterlife to eternal relentless torment. And yeah, that's what happens to her. She says it happens for like an unknown amount of time that she is stuck in this seemingly eternal torment inside the Maw. And I can agree, because I played Shadowlands, and the Maw is eternal torment.
Dude, I'm doing transmog runs right now. They had some good things about it.
Not on release. I don't know. Maybe I'm just a certified hater.
I mean, there was bad things. The gameplay, like choosing a covenant, being locked to that for an ability, and if you PvP'd and PvE'd, or did different roles like tank and healed or DPS, that sucked. But the art direction, the transmogs, the mounts, like there was some good stuff. But yeah, their gameplays.
But yeah, and that is where it is the person that I love the most in all of World of Warcraft. This super evil figure reveals himself to Sylvanas, the Jailer. We're still not going to talk about this guy in his entirety because I want to stay mostly on the topics that we'll actually be discussing throughout Cataclysm, but this is what goes on at this time, and it does play a heavy portion into the future stories. But yes, this super evil figure who is one of these what are known as the Eternal Ones, essentially kind of like what the Titans are, but for the afterlife instead of the Realm of Order and Azeroth and the observable universe, if you will. And he's like, yeah, my siblings, they casted me into this realm to be the Jailer, and they're all super mean, and they have this stupid system that's totally rigged by the original creators of everything, the First Ones. And I just want to be set free and be able to create a better world for everybody where they can all be free and have a good afterlife too. And Sylvanas is just like, bro, what the fuck are you talking about? But this is like perpetuated by Sylvanas is eventually shown these afterlives. Like the Jailer's like, I will permit you to see other afterlives. Like we'll have these Val'kyr that did follow her into the afterlife to take her to these other afterlives where she's like, they're like, tell us anybody who you want to see. And she's like, I want to see Zul'jin, the guy that, you know, tormented my blood elven people for however many millennia. And they're like, deal. And they find out, okay, he ended up in this afterlife known as Revendreth, where essentially he is kind of like, how do we describe Revendreth? They're like essentially tortured till eventually all of their sins are paid off, and then they can move on to a different part of the afterlife after they've given off enough of their sin.
They're repenting, and they're repenting is
yeah.
That, well, like there's Remoria who loves to flay flesh, you know? You remember Remoria is flying a flying sword?
I do remember this, yes.
Yeah. I don't know. I was just doing the raids and I remember it wanting to torture me.
Well, and yeah, that's essentially it. If you end up in that afterlife, it sucks. You're essentially going to be tortured. But there is an end, or logically, there's supposed to be. Like, eventually you will repent enough and you will be freed of Revendreth. And Sylvanas hears about this, and she's like, but I got sent to the Maw? Like, they sent me all the way to the darkest depths of hell with no hope of escaping, but Zul'jin doesn't get sent there. He has a chance to repent. Like, what is that? That's some bullshit. So yeah, she begins to actually see the jailer's vision, that this is cruel and unjust, and that this false arbiter that he's talking about doesn't have a proper understanding of true freedom in the world and like true morality. Like it seems too black and white in her opinion. So eventually she sees all of these afterlives. The jailer approaches her eventually after all this time, and he's like, so have you thought about my offer to join up with me and bring on this new end or this new reality? And I guess I should also mention, initially she is still like, fuck you, because the jailer does admit, he's like, yeah, I created the Helm of Domination and the sword and the domination runes and all this and that. Hearing that he had some part in making these weapons, but he claims that Arthas eventually broke free of his control and stuff like that. She's pissed. But she does eventually come around and is like, all right, jailer, I will agree to your plan. Perhaps at some point, can I go back to the regular living world now? And he's like, yes. So he ends up being like, you can like keep an eye out for these 5 signs. And he essentially gives her a prophecy telling her like, you'll see all 5 of these things happen. And that's how you'll know that I've already basically foreseen everything that will be coming to pass if you join me. And she's like, okay. And he tells her, the first is a fiery darkness that would return. And the second is that she would have to step out of the shadows and lead. The third is that a blade would pierce the heart of the world. And the fourth is that she would want to hold the blood that flowed from the wound. And finally, she would topple a king and shatter the sky itself. And once she was ready, she could tell the Val'kyr to go back to the jailer, and it would be a sign that she had accepted to his cause.
That's crazy to hear all that, because I think all that happened.
Oh, it does. It does. Every single one of these is, what, like 1, 2, 3, 4 expansion, 3 expansions? Yep.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure all of those things happened.
Yep. So, and just hearing that, as you guys might imagine, eventually Sylvanas will probably be pretty down with this little plan here. But yes, she's like, all right, I will release you from the Maw, but because of the way the Shadowlands works, the Arbiter will realize if a soul goes missing and did not end up in the Maw like it should have been. So what needs to happen is one of your Val'kyr needs to substitute for you in the afterlife here. And with that, you will have the opportunity to go back to the living world. So one of these Val'kyr by the name of Anhydel, oh my god, Annhylde, any guesses?
You're the worst. I hear. See where it is in the notes.
Segment 24. Also segment 25. Anhydel?
Yeah.
Anhydel. So yeah, she offers herself as a substitution to remain behind as long as Sylvanas also agrees to basically pact herself with the remaining Val'kyr, that they will then still have like a tangible thing to remain in the living world with, like kind of how they were packed to the Lich King. They will instead be packed to her, and she does agree and binds herself to the remaining 8 of these Val'kyr that would grant them independence, no longer slaves to the Lich King or Zoval or the jailer or any of their other forces, but they do still, to a degree, serve Sylvanas, at least to fulfill her role in the greater plans to come. And with that, she appears back on Azeroth, the living world, with these 8 Val'kyr surrounding here.
Real quick, the jailer was referenced all the way back then?
No, this comes from the Sylvanas novel, which takes place over many, many years. And this is the portion that we get that takes place right after Icecrown.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So it was kind of looked back upon. There is another story. It's The Edge of Night, which did kind of give this thing where she does end up in like an afterlife that's like so terrible, like it's hardly imaginable. But it is like heavily expanded in the other one. And even in the original story, there is the Val'kyr and them agreeing to like bond with her and stuff like that. But yeah, it is the Sylvanas novel where we actually get the jailer appearing and the fuller plot line to it. And that leads us to basically the days before the Cataclysm. It literally says that the eve of the Cataclysm, so the day before the Alliance forces break that uneasy peace fully that had been they had been trying to work on with the Horde as they launched these coordinated strikes throughout the Horde territories from Northwatch Hold and Kalimdor as they surge along this gold road into the crossroads by nightfall and attacking the camps between Honor's Stand, which is in the Barrens that leads between the Barrens and the Stone Talon Mountains. And they just, they start making actual operations on the Horde. And, well, I think they really call it Cataclysm, obviously, because it's kind of a literal expansion, but it truly is just like everything going to shit all at once. Because even after this, once they claim these portions of the Barrens, they do begin making their way into Durotar, the very heart of the Orcs' lands, where they would attack all these places like Razor Hill and these small outposts in Durotar as the true war between the Alliance and the Horde strikes to its full capacity following everything that had happened after the battle for the Undercity, everything that's happened from the Wrathgate, everything that's happened from Garrosh taking leadership. The peace is gone. There is no more peace. It seems like truly the last opportunity was the Druids meeting over in Ashenvale, and, well, they died, so. At basically the exact same time, over in the Eastern Kingdoms, you have the Forsaken beginning this brutal campaign against Gilneas, who we did mention, hey, Sylvanas kind of saw this happening. But yes, they are under War Chief Garrosh Hellscream's command as they lay siege to the Greymane Wall, seeking to conquer and assimilate this isolated kingdom that has refused to join the Alliance for years and fully unite the realm of Lordaeron under Horde control by doing so. And, well, I mean, it is going about as well as you might expect. Like, initially, they expected it to be a lot easier, but that wall does appear to be quite sturdy and hold up quite well. So they are having a real tough time managing to actually find any weaknesses in the defenses of Gilneas. And inside Gilneas, you have Tim's absolute favorite faction leader, King Genn Greymane.
He's the worst alliance leader of them all. If there was, he should honestly be part of the Horde.
You know what, Tim? I think you're going to like him even more after this story.
Okay, let's see.
But yeah, as external enemies aren't his only concern, at home, unease is growing from within his walls as he orders his son, Prince Liam, to bolster the military patrols all across the kingdom, fearful of both the Forsaken and this internal unrest that is beginning to grow from within his city, as Gilneas is still healing from the wounds of the Northgate Rebellion, where Darius Crowley basically led a rebellion against the Greymane family in an attempt to overthrow him. And now, popping up throughout all the cities, streets and whatnot, there are these gruesome murders that are beginning to appear, and he dubs them the Starlight Slasher Killings. Tim, have you ever done
really?
Have you ever done the Worgen?
That's what they called it?
Yep, that is it.
Yeah, I hate everything about it.
Do you really? Because I thought it was really cool having like this whodunit quest line with like this Sherlock Holmes kind of vibe to it.
It's not my vibe, man.
Fair enough. But yeah, I guess I should remind anyone who doesn't know, Gilneas is very kind of Victorian steampunk city that has, just a lot of inspirations from kind of that Gothic era of Europe. But yeah, so you have the Starlight Slasher Killings that are beginning to create this darker presence that is festering within the walls of Gilneas while the outside is being tested as well. And most of these people that are dying in these killings are Greymane loyalists, people that are fans of the royal family. And while a lot of people are initially blaming these killings on the Northgate rebels, like some of those people who did not get captured after the actual Civil War, the truth appears to be far more insidious, as the murderers are actually these ritualistic initiation rituals performed by the Wolf Cult, who we mentioned are the Worgen that follow the figure known as Alpha Prime, who comes from all the way back during the War of the Satyr and is a certified Malfurion hater, as well as basically one of the first ones to be let out of the Emerald Dream when Archmage Arugal opened the gateway, freeing some of the Worgen.
Is this guy? I've never heard of this primal guy. Is he in game?
He appears in the comics. What is where he comes from? The Curse of the Worgen comic. But yes, he's supposed to just be like a cool, badass looking Worgen. Thank you for tuning in to Tides of Lore. If you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share with your fellow adventurers. Your support makes all the difference. Thank you. In the wake of all of this civil unrest, King Genn Greymane and his trusted nobles, the Lord Godfrey, Ashbury, and Lord Marley, launched this secret campaign to go and hunt down all of these feral Worgen in this area known as the Black Wall during the full moons. And yeah, these clandestine hunts are meant to contain the spread of the Worgen curse while safeguarding Gilneas from this threat that they don't really want anyone to know is actually out there because, I mean, people are already stressed enough. But one of these faithful knights, King Genn Greymane, gets separated from his party while tracking one of these lone Worgen deep into the woods. And this creature turns on him before he can get his shot off, and it bites deep into his shoulder, infecting the king himself with the very curse that he had sworn to exterminate from his lands. And Genn panics, and he's like, I can't reveal this wound, otherwise these other nobles will shoot me on sight, which he admits is exactly what he would do. So he quickly wipes the blood from his shoulder, uses a cloth to kind of stop the bleeding to disguise the injury, and then stuffs it underneath his big coat, trying to obscure any sign of damage as he does his best to hope that his ruse will succeed and none will suspect that their king has been touched by the very curse.
Mm-hmm. So he's trying to cover... So he's like in a zombie movie.
He's that guy in the zombie.
When someone gets bit and then they don't tell anyone and then they turn and they start killing people in the group. Is that what Greymane is?
That's him.
Bro, he's excommunicated from the Alliance. He needs to be gone.
But yeah, he is the guy that hides the zombie bite. As the fear spreads amongst his populace, Lord Godfrey will grow increasingly impatient as the Gilneans are faced with the Forsaken at its gates and these mysterious internal uprisings with these killings that are going on. He remains fixed on wanting to kill the Worgen, and he constantly is like, hey, Genn, can't help but to notice that you have not been attending the moonlight hunts. Like, what's that about? We need to handle these Worgen. And Genn's like, yeah, you know, I'm busy. I gotta lead the people. As Godfrey will then accuse him of losing his edge after the Northgate Rebellion, and he proposes, he's like, I could take over the effort, and I will have this threat handled by the end of the week, I promise. And beneath this, Genn senses this deeper danger that Godfrey is discovering the truth about his infection and that his ambition might turn to treason. But yes, to hide his transformations from everybody and to try and gain control over his Worgen curse, he will head and retreat into these observatories where he will confide in this night elf who had eventually shown up with a bunch of these other Kaldori priestesses after hearing about the chance that there might be Worgen problems in Gilneas because, well, they kind of created the Worgens with everything that went on. Specifically, Belisra Starbreeze is the one who fashioned the Scythe of Elune itself and actually kind of brought the curse into the reality. So she's here. She arrives to counsel the king, and with this, she does find out about his infection and is basically acting as this spiritual guide for Genn to try and help him to manage this curse and guide him through these ancient night elven rituals, while explaining the origins of the Worgen curse, how it came from like the druids of the pact and stuff like that, and the pact form that eventually was turned into the Worgen curse to fight the satyrs, which ended up getting them all banished into the Emerald Dream. And through this, Genn basically relies on her secrecy and her counsel and compassion to get himself through this while hiding his infection from his entire kingdom, including even his own family.
I mean, Worgen are kind of cool, so like, I like that the infection spread. My Worgen Death Knight does look pretty freaking cool, but screw this guy, dude.
Yeah. So Belisra ends up teaching Genn these night elfin rituals that will preserve a person's mind even through their transformation, but only if the afflicted no longer hold on to guilt. as those who carry shame or secrets before going through with this ritual will not be able to willingly shift back into a human form. And with this, Genn is still carrying the burden of his hidden bite, so he really cannot go through with this ritual properly like it should be, but he does manage to do basically a ritual light version of this that does keep his mind a bit more clear than as if he was just going through it normally. And he also instructs Belithra to work with his lead kind of alchemist, Krenin Arnas, into trying to develop a potion that would completely halt the Worgen transformation, as he is seeing the fact that he is fighting a war on three fronts against the Forsaken, against the Worgen, and this beast that is now growing from within himself. And through this collaboration of Belithra Starbreeze's Lunite rituals and alchemical potions, they do manage to kind of cure Genn, at least for a time being, and manage to suppress his transformations while he maintains his royal composure in front of everybody else. Though it does get harder and harder every time he does it. But this curse is pushing him to the edge of his control over both his kingdom and himself, as he realizes the time is kind of running out, that Gilneas is on the brink of collapse, and in that moment he begins to contemplate a desperate alliance, reaching out to somebody who at least at one point hated him, but that he knows loves Gilneas, Lord Darius Crowley, who he has imprisoned within Gilneas itself after the Northgate Rebellion, as he begins to recognize that only united could they stand a chance against both the feral Worgen and these Forsaken that are trying to invade, that these old grudges and mistrust are just there to cloud judgment and would not be good for actually preserving the kingdom.
But also Crowley the leader. Make him the leader, man.
You know what? You're probably
Seems
right.
way cooler.
You're probably
Why
right.
is he in jail? Because he was standing up to Greymane?
Yeah, well, they tried to kill him.
Talking about corruption?
Well, no, he did openly, like, fight with him, like, with guns and bombs and shit.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's why he's in prison. Though, in fairness, Crowley did this because he locked his people out of Gilneas during the Scourge invasion. So, still, I mean, definitely valid. Definitely valid on Darius's anger. But that is when far to the south, in the lands known as Duskwood, nearby the area of Stormwind City itself, you have this ancient artifact known as the Scythe of Elune that gets discovered. Oh, my goodness. This thing just always seems to come back into play when these dang Worgen are popping up.
It's like a magnet to him.
But yes, it is discovered by an SI7 agent and given then to a member of the Kaldori by the name of Valorn Stillbro, who is tasked with returning it to Belithra Starbreeze, who, as we know, is in Gilneas. And with that, eventually he does arrive, and he brings her the Scythe of Elune, and is like, maybe with this we can defeat these feral Worgen. And she's like, good plan. We'll continue workshopping that and get back to it. And he's like, all right, cool, and disappears from the story forever.
Nice.
It's wild. Wild how some characters just do that. But that is when Alpha Prime somehow does get the information that the Scythe of Elune has arrived in Gilneas. And as we might remember, he really wants the Scythe of Elune because he wants to, well, free any of the remaining Worgen that are trapped in the Emerald Dream. And then he wants to go over to Darnassus and kick the fuck out of Malfurion Stormrage.
I mean, it makes sense.
Yeah. It's true. You think
fuck
that his
that guy.
4,000-year nap would, let him calm down a little bit, maybe find some inner peace, smoke on some of that
No.
peace bloom out there. But yes, so he makes this plan to go and then attack the actual city of Gilneas itself after he's gained enough Worgen inside the walls. But he also ends up allying with Sylvanas Windrunner, who's like, hey, if we, fuck up Gilneas from the inside, it'll sure make it easier for you guys to come in, and I just want that Scythe of Elune. So they're like, good plan. And the Forsaken and the Worgen of Alpha Prime's pack agree to work together in trying to take down Gilneas. Though, standing in Alpha Prime's way is this character who is known as, like, the best detective in Gilneas, really going into that that Sherlock Holmes vibe, like I said. In Gilneas, you have Halford Ramsay, who's like the most renowned detective, and he's been closing in on the truth behind the Starlight Slasher murders, that they are not in fact these Northgate rebels, but they're in fact Worgen attacks, and they're these rituals to get these people that are turning into Worgen initiated into the wolf cult itself. And well, his whole plan of uncovering all this comes to a pretty hefty stop when he runs into Alpha Prime himself, and Alpha Prime's like, yeah, you've been getting a little too close to the truth, so Monch, congratulations, you've been promoted to Worgen. And then he has like this whole story where he tries to prevent himself from being controlled by the Worgen curse, and it's just like agonizing for days on end, where he is just like basically tearing, where his body is like transforming unnaturally. And yeah, at this time also, the Worgen curse begins to spread uncontrollably throughout Gilneas, and they start to openly attack the city of Gilneas itself, that is sent into a full defensive mobilization by King Genn Greymane. And he has his son, Prince Liam, and Lord Godfrey take to the front lines to protect their people, but the enemy is just so overwhelming, and faced with no other option, Genn Greymane chooses to release his old enemies, the Northgate rebels, from prison, including Darius Crowley.
There we go. He's back at it.
And he's like, despite our past conflicts, like, you're a capable leader of turning the tide, and I believe that you care more about Gilneas than you do about our squabble. And Crowley does kind of reluctantly agree, and he returns to the battlefield with his fellow rebels, and critically he reveals a bunch of these hidden stockpiles of artillery and cannons and stuff like that they had hidden away from when they were actually still rebelling against the kingdom itself. So they do give the Gilneans a pretty heavy fighting chance moving forward against both the Worgen and the Forsaken. And well, during this whole siege that's still going on, Alpha Prime shows up, and he's like, give me the fucking Scythe of Elune, and Bellisra Starbreeze comes face to face with him. And just to remind everybody, they used to be buddies, like way back, like thousands of years back in the day, back when Alpha Prime was still known as R'hllor Fangfire, and they were basically buddy trying to work on creating the ability to fight against the Satyr. And while Bellisra eventually ends up turning to Malfurion's side. But yes, as then you have Alpha Prime condemning Malfurion, accusing him of preaching these hollow morals and enforcing the teachings of Elune and whatnot when it's only convenient to him that he has, and declaring that anyone that follows him just has duplicity and betrayal as if they were Malfurion's own blood. Proclaiming basically that he just has this personal vengeance against the Kaldori and their druidic hypocrisy. And Bellisra stands firm in the face of his fury, revealing that, well, Malfurion initially told nobody to use the pack form and all that because he had once used the pack form and he had attacked Cenarius, and Cenarius had to imprison him in the Emerald Dream. So that's why he did everything that he did, including eventually imprisoning you guys. And he's like, so, not only is Malfurion a bitch, but he's a hypocrite too. And that's what he takes away from this, and it just turns in confirming that he just sees Malfurion as this weak failure of a figure, lost in his own righteousness, and the battle between Bellisra and Alpha Prime escalates. She's about to die. That Worgen that we talked about, the detective, yeah, he just pops out of nowhere, and he's like, I'm here to save the day, and he smacks Alpha Prime across the face. Bellisra invokes the light of Elune using this divine blast that sends Alpha Prime crashing into this tunnel below, or this canal below, giving them the opportunity to escape, where though Alpha Prime is not slain, they have been somewhat driven back at this time. And with most of Gilneas beginning to fall to these Worgen, the remaining survivors regroup at the Greymane Court, which is this stronghold basically where the Greymanes themselves have lived, and is this last line of defense, a crumbling sanctuary of holding back these feral Worgen. And in the only hopes of securing and evacuating all of the civilians out of Gilneas itself and into the nearby area of Duskhaven, Darius Crowley and the Northgate rebels volunteer for a suicide mission. They say, all right, we're going to draw all the enemies to the cathedral quarter. And basically they're like, we're going to hide our cannons, we're going to hide everybody, and then we're going to fortify the cathedral as best we can. And once we've lured a massive swarm of the Worgen into the district, we're just going to unload our artillery until we're out of ammunition.
They lock him up, and then wrongfully so too. And then he's still going to die for the good of the people.
He is a hero, isn't he?
He's a top chief.
But yes, with this self-sacrifice, he does make this desperate last stand where he slaughters countless beasts, holding the line until every last ammunition round is spent. And with no means of escape, they retreat into the cathedral, where they are eventually overwhelmed and infected, now joining the ranks of the wolf cult. Though their sacrifice, however, does manage to buy them enough time to evacuate all the civilians out of Gilneas, and by the next day, the city of Gilneas itself has fallen, claimed by the bloodthirsty Worgen and their leader, Alpha Prime. And as the evacuation of the city unfolded, Greymane would basically command Laura Crowley, who is the daughter of Darius Crowley, being like, you want the good news or the bad news first? And she was like, I'll take the good news. Good news is I freed your dad. Bad news is he volunteered for a suicide mission and probably dead now. Probably got munched on by Worgen. And this floors his daughter, who gets so pissed that she pulls a gun on Genn Greymane and holds it up to him in screaming in rage that she believes that this was like a last twisted like way of getting back at the Northgate rebels for their betrayal of him. And eventually Genn's son Liam restrains her as she collapses into the ground, screaming in fury and sorrow, begging to be let go so that she can go and die with her father. Genn's such a good guy.
No, he needs to be taken down.
And with all of that happening, well, now you got the big event. Because deep within the Temple of the Earth, this building, citadel, whatever you want to call it, in the elemental plane of Earth itself, inside an area known as the Stone Core, you have the once aspect of the Earth, Deathwing, formerly known as Neltharion, the Earth Warder, who has last been seen when he was fighting with Alexstrasza and the rest of the aspects after the events of the Second War against the Alliance and the Horde. And yeah, he kind of got his ass beat there. The dragon's soul got blown into tiny pieces, and he had to go running. And like we mentioned, he's been here, and he's been, well, getting juiced, if I'm to be honest. He's been probably popping so many roids.
Well, he's been getting Biss purple armor crafted for him, dude.
Yep, and put on free, no charge, which is crazy.
He got enchants too, yeah.
Because, yes, his body's shattered from everything that he's been through. He's been kept alive, though his body has been tearing into these fissures of magma, and his mind has been raptured into complete madness as he's been absorbing the raw power of the elemental plane of Earth itself as he hides in here. But the greater threat that's coming from all this is not the wounds. As we mentioned before, the reason that Neltharion even kind of goes off the deep end in the first place is because of those ever so present old gods. The old gods exist in the earth, and with that being the case, the dragon aspect, or at least Neltharion, kind of had a lot of whispers going on in his heads, even long before this. But now that he's in the actual elemental plane of the earth itself, and after these old gods have grown stronger and been able to break free in the time span since we last see him of Cthulhu, of Yogg-Saron being stirred from their prisons, these whispers that are twisting his thoughts and inflating his strength, just like pumped up to the 100th degree. And with this, the void for him is no longer just a temptation. It is the only truth. His goal now is to bring on the hour of twilight, the end of existence. And under the influence of these old gods, Deathwing's broken form is reforged. His body being, like we just mentioned, having his Priebus put on, his special made armor that is crafted by these Twilight Hammer cultists that have toiled ceaselessly forging these elementium plates to bind his form even further. So we mentioned before that he kind of got some metal upgrades, like steel, I think it was back in the day. we got some new upgrades, even harder stone, elemental plane type shit. And this is like the scene that you'll actually see when you watch the Cataclysm trailer itself and you see all these metal plates being swung onto his body and him screaming out in agony. These are these elementium plates that are being bonded to his body as they are hammered and bolted into his hide as he lets out these torturous screams of joy and anger kind of all at once. And eventually Deathwing will erupt into Azeroth, shattering the world pillar that is basically what is holding up the elemental plane of Earth from colliding with Azeroth. It is a Titan creation. And yeah, he just rips that bitch down and comes exploding out of the elemental plane of Earth through what is the Maelstrom, right in the center of the Great Sea, in between all of the fun little locations that we know in Azeroth. And
so this confirms the visions and everything that he's been feeling. This was the big climax.
Yep, Drekthar back in our last episode, constantly talking about don't let him in. Well, a bit late on that one. But yes, as Deathwing reemerges, all these elemental rifts appear across nearly every region of Azeroth as the land itself ruptures and the mortal realm and the elemental plane become so much closer than they ever were. These permanent scars where the boundary between the two have basically collapsed, allowing the heroes and invaders alike to traverse the worlds, where this is kind of the pre-patch event for the Cataclysm itself, where you'll have all of these zones where every like 15 minutes they're just like invasion time. I looked this up and I was reading through it because I've never actually played this early in Cataclysm, and apparently this would happen like every 10 to 15 minutes in major cities, and you wouldn't be able to use any of the services until it was over. This would drive me insane. Okay, you couldn't use flight masters, you could use portals, and that was it. And I was like, bro, this is terrible. Who the fuck?
Yeah.
But yes, with Deathwing busting through the doorway, he brings on these blazing infernals, these flooding waves, earthquakes, and howling storms that rip across all of Azeroth, tearing through the hearts of civilization and just the world itself. It is hard to understate, if you don't play World of Warcraft, just how much everything in Azeroth changed following this event. Much to the chagrin of players. I honestly think that if Cataclysm had the opportunity to let you go back to the old world instead of being forced into just the new one, people would have loved this expansion. Like, if we had the tech that we have now for it, people would have loved this expansion. They would have. I think the biggest problem with it is that they took away what people did love to replace it.
Well, they should. We have Classic now and everything. They should have a way where we can go, if we really want to. It could take us back to these old zones and stuff. But I guess there wasn't flying. I guess you would have to use a ground mount. I don't know. It might be a little wonky.
Fair enough. I still think it could work, and I think that, again, I think it would have been absolutely adored. But regardless, it's not. The world changes forever. It is reshaped. The last time it was reshaped so much was the actual Sundering itself, where the Well of Eternity exploded, creating all the continents that we know today. It is only comparable to an event of that scale as the natural world unravels. The Alliance will have these emergency meetings in Stormwind Keep with the reports of all these earthquakes and these floods and these elemental anomalies, but they do also begin to hear about this other rising threat that's going on at this time, the Twilight Hammers cult. Those pesky little guys coming from Draenor. They even have recently had these doomsayers that have been flooding through the towns themselves, preaching that the end of days are coming, and we're doing their best to desperately recruit the disillusioned as, well, basically to recruit them into the Twilight's Hammer cult. And as the elements of the wind and water begin to assault the capital cities, the Alliance forces repel the invaders, but the message is clear that the end is no longer just prophesized, it has begun. And as the Cataclysm rips through Azeroth, it shatters mountains, it swallows entire coastlines under these massive tidal waves that surge across Kalimdor, the Eastern Kingdoms, flooding ancient regions and revealing new ones. These dry plateaus like the Thousand Needles are just plunged beneath the sea. Tanaris' desert sands give way to now saltwater deltas. Coastal towns like Auburndine are completely drowned underneath it as the land itself shatters. The Ruthrian village is torn apart. Feathermoon Stronghold is forced to evacuate just everywhere. And even away from the coastline, you have these lava flows and avalanches and wildfires that just begin to ravage across all of the lands. The Barrens itself splits into two pieces, now becoming the North and South Barrens. But with these tectonic shifts, they don't only destroy, they also begin to reveal things. Mountain passes that were once sealed for millennia crack open, creating these new traveling routes, while certain paths like the ones between Badlands and Loch Modan are completely blocked by landslides. And specifically, I think the most major thing is this hidden Titan mechanism, which had long shielded the entrance to the Titan facility of Old Doom, is damaged, and the veil concealing Old Doom is revealed, granting the heroes access to this mythical Titan facility that now lays open. Even all the way in lands that we will not see for a long time, you get information about just how big the Cataclysm affects them. You have Zandalar still out in the middle of the sea that has originally believed to just be absolutely devastated by the Cataclysm and shattered into pieces, is proved false. They find that this disaster has completely changed the surrounding region of Nazmir, which was once this elevated jungle that has now sunken into the swamp and become more corrupted and damaged as the Cataclysm itself would shatter the second seal of one of these other Titan facilities holding the artificial old god of Gahun, as the land begins to rot and decay, seeping out of this prison as it sinks even further into the sea. You even get the currents and tides that were out at sea completely ravaged everything that most people understood about the weather charts and the way to navigate through the sea. The mists that had once hid a land far to the south have disappeared from the continent of Pandaria following this event. The massive living turtle that has a city and or like entire continent on its back, known as the Wandering Isle, gets battered by colossal waves, sending shock waves throughout the residents of this navigating turtle, who we will definitely see more of soon. Me and Tim actually just did that quest.
We did. Gotta get that mount.
And as it all kind of climaxes with Deathwing himself flying across all of these lands, burning and killing all the creatures and players alike as he passes through all of these zones. Eventually, he descends upon Stormwind City itself as he swoops over the city, crashing into it. The Park District explodes into cinders. The towers of the city collapse as he leaves these molten claw marks scratching across the gates. And as he spreads more of this chaos amongst the city, eventually he snatches up his daughter's head, Onyxia, who we mentioned a while back. Varian was like, put that on a spike outside. I guess it's still there. I feel like the meat would have fallen off by now, but what do I know? I guess I don't know. Decay race on dragons. But yeah, he grabs up Onyxia's head and he flies off, which does actually puzzle a bunch of the people of Stormwind, because they're like, why did he stop there? Like, he had the power to annihilate the entire city, yet he chose to leave it broken, not destroyed. And some people are like, it was a show of dominance, while other people are like, he just wanted people to know that he could have ended it all, but chose not to. And that brings us to our final scene, where as the Cataclysm tore through Azeroth, you come to Gilneas, where its wall that was doing all that it could to keep out the invasion of the Forsaken following losing the actual capital city to the Worgen cracks and shatters into pieces due to the ground ripping and tearing, now leaving the Forsaken and this campaign led by Garrosh Hellscream a wide open doorway to get into the kingdom. And that's where we're going to pick up next week.
This is crazy. That was a big build up to Cataclysm, because this is, for me, that's the first thing I know that's happening in Cata is, the world shattering.
Yep, there is a lot that goes on. I mean, there's a bunch of like short stories and stuff like that goes on kind of in this area too, but we're going to get to those. I kind of wanted to do this, what I consider to be one of the most major stories, especially with how it plays further into the future. But there's going to be a bunch of alliance stories that take place right during this time too. And I really like it. Like I said, I think that Cataclysm actually does bring a lot of stories to fruition that I've always wanted to see. It's just the gameplay was not what I wanted to see.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, no. I didn't even play classic Cata.
Me either.
I played all the other classics. I mean, I don't think I'm going to play Mop either, except for getting the mount for doing the starting zone.
But I mean, like literally, I remember watching the Cataclysm cinematic back in like 2011 or whenever I was about to hop on the Miss Pandaria train and just seeing Deathwing like land on the walls of Stormwind and like the statues falling over and stuff. I'm like, man, this is an awesome villain. And I wish that he did get the justice he deserves, because I fucking hate his raid. And he doesn't, I mean, he usually just gets clowned on because the Black Dragons have usually just got clowned on. But in terms of the build up to him as a villain, it did feel very good. It felt like a lot of stuff was leading to eventually being him. He didn't just feel like one of those villains that's the jailer and popped out of nowhere and was just like, I'm here to be evil now.
Right.
So I'm excited to get into more of this story. I mean, there's some stories in here that I'm going to be kind of with, but I think a lot of this is going to make a lot of what we've discussed earlier that might have felt like unnecessary padding to the story fully come into fruition as we do see it. So I'm excited. Alrighty. Well, if you guys did make it this far, please make sure you drop us a sub, a like, a follow on, if you're over on Spotify, 5-star. If you're over on Spotify, we're really trying to push for 200 followers. We're right about there. If you're over on YouTube, we're really trying to get to 1,000, and we are also getting really close. We've had a great week, so I do want to thank you guys so much for that. And if you are enjoying the content and have not joined us already, please do. That is all that we have for you this week, and we will see you next week. Thank you so much for making it to the end of this episode. Your guys' support truly means the world to us. If you're interested in hearing more, we have our full show on YouTube and Spotify, new episodes dropping every Tuesday. I also want to take this moment to give a special thank you to Fantasy Lo-Fi for providing the music for this episode. You can find them on YouTube at Fantasy Lo-Fi or on Spotify under Bits and Hits. Be sure to show them some love, as their music does truly bring this journey to life. Once again, thank you for joining us on Tides of Lore, and we will see you next week.